Our US correspondent, Rich Reynolds, has joined us for another week. How you doing, sir?
Howdy doody.
You all right?
Doing great.
Did you dodge those storms on the way from Valencia?
You know what? Coming from Valencia, there were no storms. But my car could really use a wash. So maybe going back, I'll do that.
We've been getting it for the last day or so. So you'll probably be all right. Yeah, before that.
No, we were kind of free of any storms. Just humidity. That's all we got.
Oh, I know.
That's all we got.
Yeah, it's been terrible. Meanwhile, as we look at the stories making the headlines in the States this afternoon, Joe Biden has been back on the picture in recent days. We'll talk about him out on the campaign trail shortly. But first of all, more importantly, the headline that he said Benjamin Netanyahu is not doing enough to free Gaza hostages. And of course, there's been a lot of bad news coming out of that story in the last couple of days as well.
God knows we've been talking about it for the past 6 months since I started doing the show, and that situation doesn't seem to be any closer to resolving itself. But from every time I've seen him do any sort of postmortem, any time he's done a press conference, he is, meaning Joe Biden, is pretty much up to here with Netanyahu, and now Kamala Harris has had it with him, and they feel that he isn't doing enough to move things forward to get those hostages.
It was an answer to a question as well. He didn't come out and say it. He was asked whether he thought Netanyahu was doing enough, and he replied no. So often, you get the headlines from what the reporters try to get them to say or not say as well. US officials are working on a take-it-or-leave-it deal, according to the Washington Post. And, of course, as I mentioned, lots of bad news coming from the area in the past few days. But he doesn't really show any signs of stopping. And anybody that goes up against him, including, the demonstrators who were asking for a hostage deal, he goes straight back at them and still says and believes everything he's doing is right.
Well, that strike they had in the country over the weekend, where they had thousands of people who were protesting and going on strike, shutting down their work just so they could get some movement on this thing, that doesn't seem to have taken hold at all. I don't think that's had any influence on Netanyahu at all. The ball is completely in his court as to what's being done. As we know, Qatar and Egypt are also involved in this. They're trying to move the needle, trying to get these hostages back, and the Hamas doesn't seem to want to get rid of them. They want to hold on to them as long as possible. And it's an impossible situation, but
it does seem, though, that perhaps Netanyahu is losing the support, not just of Biden and Harris, but also locally. And also Great Britain's been in the news talking about stopping some arms sales, perhaps not a great deal, but some arms sales to the area. And he's been quite robust in his response to that action.
Very much. He's basically telling him to mind your own business. But you're right. He doesn't seem to have the support of the U.S., doesn't have the support of the U.K. or any of the other allies. And everybody's pretty much seems to be ready to move on as quickly as possible from this thing. And, you and I have talked about this for 6 months. We just feel so badly for the people who live in that area. They can't seem to get a break. You would think that people who are well educated and people who are plugged in and people who are compassionate can reach some sort of agreement where they can get this thing done. But it doesn't seem to be working right now.
The U.S. still very much involved as well, with the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan talking to U.S. families of the remaining hostages as well. And Mr. Biden expected to present what they're calling a final hostage release and ceasefire proposal later this week. That's according to the Axios website. But of course, just like we see in the war situation in Ukraine as well, a lot of people claim and say different things. Yep. And it's quite often
all true.
Not all true, so it's difficult to see whether it'll be whether it will be a final deal or not.
Well, we always talk every week. We say, hey, things could happen in the next hour or so, but they never do, and so we'll see by next week. Maybe something will happen. I don't know. Hope so.
Okay. To the United States, then, big demonstration there as well Sunday with 10,000 hotel workers out. What was that about? It's all about the big hotels as well, the big name hotels.
It's all about money. It's all about the people at the Hyatt And if you've traveled, everybody listening knows what Hyatt and Hilton, and I believe the third one is Sheraton. They had 10,000 hotel.
Marriott.
It's Marriott.
Hilton.
I apologize to Sheraton, to Marriott. That workers in San Francisco, San Diego, around Canada, in Honolulu, Boston, Seattle, Greenwich, Connecticut. They are on strike, or they went on strike this weekend. It was a limited strike. They only went for a few days to protest that they want a little bit of money. Apparently, a lot of these hotels, when COVID hit, they cut back on staff, but
they now they got the money back.
Right, now they want their money back. The hotel housekeepers in a place like Baltimore are trying to get their wages up to $20 an hour from $16.20. In Boston, the housekeepers make $28 an hour. The union's trying to get them up to $38 an hour in the next 4 years. So we'll see.
A lot of those contracts expire this year as well. So that's new right. 4-year deal is what it's about.
Yeah. So they want to be paid more, and as with all of these strikes, it's about money. So
I think generally the tourist industry, while it lost a lot of money during COVID, it does seem to be in most areas back up and running.
Yeah.
Perhaps not recouping all of those costs, but workers perhaps shouldn't need to be still earning less than they were in 2009.
All the numbers that we're looking at say that the travel industry is back up, at least in these hotels, around 9% from the past couple of years. So people seem to be traveling, and I don't know about you, but when you go to a hotel, do you ever see a hotel that's kind of empty, where there are no people in it? No, hotels are kind of jammed with people, at least the ones that I go to. So I think that it's imperative that and know that they will work something out. I don't know if they're going to be getting the raises they're talking about, but at a certain point, management is manning the lifeboat, so to speak, at these hotels, and that's always fun.
They should remember how to do it.
They should remember how to do it, but sometimes they don't. I've as a member of management, I've covered strikes in the past where I've had to do things that I started doing when I was a beginning broadcaster, and it's always very interesting at what you remember.
Another big story that's making the news in the States this week, cell phones in schools. Now, a number of leaders are banning them. And the question is, are they a distraction or a necessary tool? We're seeing this in other parts of the world as well.
I don't know how they're looking at things in places like the UK or France or Germany or even here in Spain, but it is a major story in the States because you have 50 different states and the District of Columbia who've all look at this kind of differently, that places like California, New York, Virginia, they are looking to ban all cell phone usage within means. In other words, some of them are allowing cell phones to be used during lunchtime, during recess, etc. But the big question is, on behalf of a lot of educators, is that people who are underprivileged and underserved only have a cell phone. That's their only means of communication. How do they contact their parents if something happens? They don't have iPads. They don't have desktops. All they have is a phone. So it's a communication issue, and I completely understand that. But if I were a teacher, I would not want my students sitting there playing games online, communicating, texting with each other in the classroom, or even texting with my mother. I hate to say this as an old fogey, but if I needed to talk to my mother when I was in school, I waited till I got home. That was it. I got to believe that there's a little bit of truth in that now, that you can wait. So I think that a lot of these states are going to win out, and I think that the ban is going to be in place in more and more places as you go down the line.
Don't know if you noticed this, because the story that you were quoting from was from USA Today, and I loved that after the third line there is a little ad saying, bearing in mind that we're talking about not having cell phones. Yep. Start the day smarter. Get all you need in your inbox every morning. Of course,
I know.
I love the way the thing. Sorry, well, a little bit of lurgy today. So apologies for the odd cough. Yeah,
but if you're a teacher, and anybody who's a teacher out there knows about distractions in class, I think you'll be in favor of cell phones being either banned or curtailed. Back in the 80s, they used to have a thing about pagers in classrooms. Mm-hmm. And, thank God pagers eventually went away. But it clearly is a distraction. But on the other side, I see how people want to, if this is your only means of communication, how they want to have that at their fingertips.
Perhaps it's a different world these days as well, that kids have to travel home in.
Could be. It could be a little different than when we were in school.
I don't want to, but anyway, I do think that the distraction in the classroom is not something that anybody would want. Meanwhile, at the polls, Harris widening the lead over Trump, according to Reuters and Ipsos.
Well, right now there are about 20 polls that are out there on a general basis that at least that I'm following, and right now the latest one is from Reuters, which is a very reputable organization. It's a news gathering organization, and Ipsos. And last Thursday, they have Harris at 45, Trump at 41. But they're showing that Harris is picking up a lot of support among women and Hispanics, while Trump is continuing to do well with men who have not been to college, with white men in general.
Blue-collar workers are always...
A lot of blue-collar workers.
And there's about a 2% point margin of error in those as well, we should point out.
That's right, about 2 points. So she could be up by 4 points, she could be up by 3 points or 2 points, something like that. But she's definitely...
So when you break it down into differing ethnic groups, it does actually show a wider division, as you were pointing out there.
Well, the thing that seems to be making the difference when she got appointed to this to running in place of Biden is that people suddenly became very, very excited about the campaign, very excited about her. There are a lot of people out there, and I have friends in the States that I've talked to who said, "Yeah, I'm not voting. Neither person excites me. I'm not going to vote." And no matter how much I could stand on my head and yell, "You got to vote. It's really, really important thing," they're just not into it, and there are a lot of people who are like that.
And that's what people you're talking to in the States. What about the overseas voters, those that you meet up with here in Spain?
Well, the overseas voters are kind of important. There could be as much as a 9-point swing if everybody who lives overseas votes. So I would encourage everybody to go online and figure out how to vote. It's votefromabroad.org. Is one of the sites you go through. I think there are 2 or 3. Register to vote. I'm registered to vote back in the States, waiting on my ballot. I should get my ballot in about 3 weeks and be enthusiastic about voting for the candidate of my choice. But if you're listening out there and you're American, for God's sake, register to vote. Cast your vote. It's kind of your duty, and it's kind of a big thing. And you really, your vote will make a difference, even living over here.
Interesting, out of this poll, some 73% of Democratic registered voters said they were more excited about voting after Harris entered the race. While in March, a poll by the same bodies, Reuters Ipsos, found that 61% of respondents who intended to vote for Biden were doing so mainly to stop Trump. 52% of Harris voters in the August poll were voting to support her as a candidate rather than primarily oppose Trump.
I think that even 4 years ago, people voted for Biden because they didn't want Trump to be reelected. And there was quite a bit of that. But now the enthusiasm seems to have swung toward Harris. People seem to like the way Trump handles the economy by a rate of 45 to 36%. I tend to disagree with that. But Harris, by contrast, has a 47 to 31% advantage on abortion and rights like that. So
issues that are going to come up in the debate, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Very much so.
But so we saw, as we mentioned, Joe Biden back out on the campaign trail this week as well, wowing voters in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, a great American city, Steel Town, USA, rallying the union vote at U.S. Steel. They had about 10,000 members at 10,000 employees at U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh. Biden has been very forceful, along with Harris, on nurturing and pursuing that union vote, which Trump is not. But Trump, on the other hand, still has stood up and said, well, I've been really good toward the union worker myself, and we happen to know that is not true at all. And a lot of the union workers already know that. So I think that whether or not a member of a union looks at a leader of a union and says, well, my boss says to vote for Harris, I'm going to go ahead and do that. That remains to be seen. But getting this vote from U.S. Steel, a lot of this has to do with the potential purchase of U.S. Steel by a company called Nippon Steel out of Tokyo that they're trying to buy U.S. Steel for, and I know you know what the number is, $14.9 billion. And God knows how many union jobs are going to be lost because of that. So Harris and Biden are against that merger. And for the record, so is Trump. So a lot of people are against that. So whether or not it actually goes through, that's in the hands of the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times these big deals, they end up getting blown up.
Political hot potatoes, they are.
Yep.
Meanwhile, then, tell us about the debate, when and where.
Oh, the debate. It's what everybody's waiting for. Unfortunately, is not tonight. It is not this week. It is next Tuesday in Philadelphia. It will be carried live on ABC and CNN. If those of you can catch that, anybody living over here, it's going to be at I believe at 9 o'clock Eastern time, meaning it's going to be on at 3 a.m. here, 2 a.m. in the UK. They're expecting like 60, 70 million people to watch this. It's going to be, as Trump would say, it's going to be huge, just huge. So
best debate ever.
Best debate ever. I'm the best debater there ever has been. But whether the mics are clipped between.
We were talking about this last week. Yeah. Whether the person who's not speaking will have their mics dropped or not. We don't know whether that's not been sorted even, has it?
No, they were debating it, and whether or not it actually goes through, I have no idea at this time where they stand with that. But Harris just has to be presidential, and she has to be forceful, and she's got to take
know
Trump.
Her facts.
Got to know her facts, and she's going to put him on the spit. She's going to roast him a little bit. We know Trump is not really good with facts. He's really good with opinion and kind of pushing people around. But she was a prosecutor, so she spent a lot of her life in a courtroom, and I think she's going to do very, very well. He's going to really be driving the whole thing about consumer prices, because no matter how much the economy is improving, not only in the U.S. but in Spain and other European countries, the cost of living is up quite a bit. It's up at least almost 20% in the past 4 years, and you can't turn your back on that. And so he's going to be hammering that home toward her, and she's going to be talking about voting rights and abortion and issues like that. So we'll see what happens on next Tuesday night.
A lot to win and a lot to lose.
Let's all be there
debate.
Tuesday night.
Okay. And just the few things that have been going on the Harris-Trump front recently. The appearance of Trump at Arlington Cemetery, which has blown up out of all proportion.
Well, I think this is a big story, and I think it was covered extensively by every New York and every American news outlet. And that is that Trump appeared at at Arlington Cemetery, which is, for not only for Americans but for everybody who visits. It's sacred ground. You've got 100,000 soldiers buried there, and you don't go in there with a photo op. And his presence was requested by around 12 of the, I want to get this right, 13 service members were killed.
That's correct. They
were killed when the U.S. Moved out of Afghanistan 3 years ago. So this was the third anniversary. So the families of these three servicemen asked that Trump show up. From what we understand, and we get conflicting information about this, they did not ask either Biden or Harris, Biden or Harris to show up. So Trump shows up. And they shot a bunch of pictures over gravestones with him giving the thumbs up, and it was...
They used it on the campaign material, didn't they?
They used it exactly. They shot a spot with it. They used it as campaign material. Even though there is a sign that says no photographs allowed on this ground, they still went ahead and did it.
Because there was also the issue about a cemetery employee who was pushed aside, and she said she was unfairly attacked and she acted professionally. But this is what I think caused the whole thing to blow up out of all proportion, really.
I'm sure that person was not knocked to the ground and not punched and hit and that sort of thing. But
certainly that wasn't alleged,
people do tend to say, "Oh, there was a physical altercation," and that's been confirmed by a lot of sources. But it comes down to one thing: it's respect. It comes down to, should you be doing photo ops at a national cemetery? I think the answer would be no. Others may disagree with that, but I believe that my father is buried in a military cemetery. I don't think I would want anybody going to his gravesite and shooting photos for campaign materials of any kind over them.
Apparently a number of the families were happy for pictures to be taken, but whether they were saying that they wanted them used on the campaign trail, I don't know. And then, of course, there was subsequently the Truth Social account where a number of families were also asking Kamala Harris directly why she wasn't there. But as you said at the outset, Trump was invited by the members of some of these 13 families, and perhaps she wasn't. That's not made clear in any of the stories.
Yeah, I saw an interview with one person who said, well, we didn't invite them. That's why they were not there. But others at the same time said, well, we would love it if they had been there, but why didn't they come? So you're getting it from both sides. I'm not really sure what the truth is.
I get confused with I have to say, with the American networks, I get confused because I know which way they generally come down on.
What?
But to be honest, I lose track because it's not that I get confused. I get confused about what's the actual truth.
Yeah.
And former President Donald Trump said on Sunday that he had every right to interfere with the 2020 election. Still 2 criminal cases up.
Well, yeah, he did an interview with Fox, and he whenever he is interviewed by Fox News, he lets it all hang out. And he pretty much agreed with the fact that he had interfered with the election, and he had every right to do it. He said, every time I interfere in something, my poll numbers go up. I'm paraphrasing. He said, but I had every right to do it. And you get indicted, your poll numbers go up. When people indict you, your poll numbers go down. That makes no sense at all. So
he was indicted again last week, of course, over the efforts to overturn the loss. And he's accused of trying to carry out a multi-pronged effort, which included trying to disenfranchise voters in certain states and interfering with the election results by repeatedly claiming it was stolen, even though he knew those claims were false. And do we have a date for these now? When is it going to come? It's going to be after the election, right?
It's probably going to be after the election.
At which point, if he wins, he could have pardoned himself anyway. So,
well, that's very, very true. And the big question is, can he do that? And the Supreme Court doesn't even know if he can pardon himself. It's never been brought up in 250 years. Nobody's ever tried to pardon themselves, but nobody ever had a reason to.
One of the judges who was involved in that actually said in the week that she wished she hadn't gone that way. But
yeah, right now the Republican Party seems, and Trump seem to be more concerned with not getting more people to vote for Trump, but in voter suppression, on getting people not to vote for Harris and making it more difficult, especially in places like the South, places like Georgia, Mississippi. And they ask for a number of different kinds of ID. You've got to have a certain kind of driver's license, and a lot of people don't drive. So, in other words, if you don't have a driver's license, a lot of states say...
A lot of Americans don't have passports, do they?
They do not.
That's the only photo ID they have is a driver's license.
I think a lot of the people in my family, for instance, don't have passports. And so a lot of states, they make it very, very difficult for people, especially people of color, to vote. People who are older, who... don't pay attention to that sort of documentation, don't carry that sort of documentation. And so it's a little more difficult. So if they can keep older people, educated people, people of color from voting, they could win.
Less educated people.
Yeah, they could win.
But they're a bit, I don't know if that's, maybe one way of going about it. I'm not sure that it will actually do any good there. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Generally, those people have probably been excluded in the past anyway from.
That's right. And for them to say, they say, hey, and it's well documented in media. This is their trick. This is what they want to do. So those of you listening out there who are American, don't fall for the trick. Get your documentation. Find out what you need to have within your state. If you need a driver's license, you need a passport, go get that stuff and get out there and vote.
Back to facts. Yep. Donald Trump was telling the Fox News host that he thinks God believes he'll straighten out the country after he survived the assassination attempt in July. That was why God maybe saved him, in his own words.
Yeah, he said, if you believe in God, you believe that I was saved from doing this. And God wants me to help the country. That's a paraphrase, but that's basically what he was saying. He was saved by the Savior to continue and to be reelected and to save the United States of America. God love you.
Okay. So, meanwhile, a couple of big issues at stake within the election. Trump has signaled his support for Florida's marijuana legalization. That was just a day after saying they would vote against a separate ballot measure that would expand abortion rights in Florida.
Well, we know for a fact, because he said so, and I have no reason not to believe him, that he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, and he doesn't do drugs. But now he's in favor of marijuana being approved for recreational use in the state of Florida. It's also on the ballot in North Dakota and South Dakota. And very, very slowly, we are approaching a majority of states in the country where it is allowed. They have a majority right now for medicinal purposes. If you get a note from your doctor, you can get pot. But right now, I think the number is 24 states approximately have that's right. 24 states in the District of Columbia have legalized the recreational use of cannabis, and 14 others have approved it for medical use. So those are the exact numbers. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, who is supporting Trump, is against it being legalized. And my feeling is that...
So you're saying like Republicans are divided on these issues?
They are divided in that issue.
So Democrats?
Yeah, Democrats a little bit. But the fact is, it's like a ball rolling downhill. It's picked up enough momentum. And pot's been around for an awfully long time. And so what's going to happen is it's going to be eventually... approved in all states. It may take 20 years, but it's going to happen. What happened in Florida is DeSantis was saying, I don't want to smell pot everywhere I go. That's why I don't want it. Well, I came from Oregon where pot is legal, and I can tell you I didn't smell pot wherever I went. It was
there are places where it isn't legal. You smell it everywhere anyway.
It's like get over it and just move on. It's people aren't dying from it. It's not that big a deal when you come down to it.
Something you've picked up on is the Helmsley Trust, which actually do quite a lot of good work in the health area of American industry. Their latest award, or financial award, is to try and help clear up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, as it's known.
This is a story that I've wanted to talk about for a couple of weeks, and I think it's kind of important. But there is a huge patch of garbage floating off the state of California. It's twice the size of Texas, and it's been there for a number of years. And there's a group being funded by the Helmsley Group, and they are slowly, very slowly, pulling this thing apart and hauling it back to shore where all this... It's mostly plastic, by the way.
Well, actually, reading through the detail, a vast majority of it is actually old fishing nets.
That's right. There is a lot of old fishing net, but think about it. It's twice the size of a gigantic state like Texas. And what they do is they go and they chop it apart, and they only go out once a year. So for instance, I believe they're out there right now. They're out there during the month of August. They won't return till next year. And so what happens is they're chopping this thing apart, and a lot of times they just put a boom around it and they drag it into shore, and it takes 5 days for them to drag it into the West Coast. So I just think it's kind of an important story.
It's good that something's being done. I mean, it's amazing that it doesn't actually move because it's the way it's caught in the currents.
Yeah.
It's pretty much in the same place, which is probably a good thing.
It's amazing.
It's not getting distributed, which would be much more difficult to bring in.
But I understand from interviews and such, and from watching videos about it, that you can see it from space. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But they are making their way, chopping it apart. I think they've been working on it about 3 or 4 years now, and hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years it'll all be done. And it isn't. The good news is it's not growing.
Yeah.
It's not growing. It's actually decreasing in size because of the works of these people.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Now you're a big film buff.
Yep.
Films to watch in September. Beetlejuice. Instead of calling it just Beetlejuice 2, which is quite good. And Wolves. I thought it was Wolves, but anyway.
Yeah, there are a couple of, everybody knows when the summer movies are gone, and the big movie of the summer was Deadpool. but the more cerebral movies start coming out in September.
It's when they have all of the different film festivals, so you get slightly more highbrow things coming out.
And a couple of films to watch out for. We're not going to get into all of them, but there's a documentary on Apollo 13, which is going to be on Netflix in a matter of fact, starting on September 5th, which is in a couple days. There is also, as you mentioned, there's a movie called Wolves, which is out now.
Clooney and Pitt.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt. It's a caper movie, sort of like Ocean's 11, and the two of them are very watchable. The reviews have been okay. You know, it's what I've been reading is that it's a lot of fun. Don't expect much. It's Clooney and Pitt just kind of kidding around. But the movie I'm excited about, there are two movies, and one is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which everybody's heard about, Michael Keaton returning to form, and the reviews have been sensational. It's Tim Burton's first movie in 5 years since he did Dumbo. But apparently it's a wonderful, wonderful, not really scary, but macabre film that people are really singing the praises of. The other movie I want to talk about before we go, because I know we're really tight on time, is Megalopolis.
I was going to bring it up anyway.
Okay, what do you know about it?
All I know is it's something that Francis Ford Coppola was working on for years, thought it would never happen. It's happened, and people hate it.
Apparently, it's horrible.
I was right.
I don't know. It played at I think it played at the Venice Film Festival. I think it may have played at Sundance. You're right. He's been working on it for 40 years. We haven't heard much from him in the past 20 years, and you got to give the guy some props. I mean, anybody who directs 3 Godfather films and Apocalypse Now, and he's truly a great director. But at the end of the day, right now, he's 83 years old. He invested
85, I think.
80, is he 85? Yeah. I'll go with that. $120 million of his own money with Adam Driver, Shia LaBeouf, Aubrey Plaza, and Dustin Hoffman. Comes out the end of this month. Has gotten terrible reviews.
Some people did actually like it, I have to say.
Yeah.
Some film critics said they did.
But a lot of critics watched it and said, I have no idea what I'm watching. And there are those movies where you walk out of the theater and you say, what did I just see? I have no idea. But anyhow, go see for yourself. Megalopolis comes out in a few weeks. And Beetlejuice, and Wolves. Those are the biggies.
All right, we're going to wrap with Adele. She's told her fans she will not see them for an incredibly long time. She's finished the final show of her European tour in Munich, which was like a pop-up. I know some people from here have just been there this weekend to watch that 10-date stint in Germany. Over 730,000 tickets. But, of course, that's more than any residency outside Las Vegas, which she's been doing as well.
She did Las Vegas for 3 years. It was a weekend one, which is kind of weird. So she only did Saturdays and Sundays at a hotel in Las Vegas. And then during the week, she'd fly off and do concerts around the world. And as you said, she just finished doing a 10-concert set in Munich and sold 730,000 tickes. Are you kidding me?
That's just for the Munich shows, right?
This is the Munich shows. And I go, oh my gosh! I mean, that is sensational. So she basically told everybody, "I'm done for a while. I'll see you later."
Her biggest tune on Billboard, what would you think? Not Send My Love, Not Someone Like You. But it's actually rolling in the deep. 7 weeks at the top in Billboard in 2010, this one. All right, Rich, good to speak to you.
See you soon.
You'll be talking to Moody this time next week.
Can't wait.
Cheers.